The last straw. When diplomacy dies, Captain Sarah Mitchell stood at the observation deck of the TSV Pioneer's Hope, her hands pressed against the reinforced glass as she stared at the horror below. The research station on Kepler 442b should have been a beacon of human achievement. Instead, smoke rose from twisted metal and shattered domes scattered across the planet's surface like broken dreams. The silence on the bridge was deafening. Behind her, Lieutenant Commander David Park worked at his console. His face pale as scanner readings confirmed what they all feared. 847 souls had called this place home. Scientists, engineers, their families, even children, who had been born here under alien stars. Now there was nothing but death and destruction. Captain, Park's voice cracked slightly. I'm detecting traces of hegemony plasma weapons. The energy signatures match their latest destroyer-class vessels. He paused, swallowing hard. The attack was systematic. They targeted life support first, then the escape pods. Nobody was meant to survive. Sarah closed her eyes, remembering the last transmission they had received from the station 3 days ago. Dr. Elena Rodriguez had been excited about a breakthrough in quantum biology, something about understanding how life could thrive in environments previously thought impossible. The children had been preparing for their annual science fair. Normal people living normal lives, pursuing knowledge and happiness in humanity's latest frontier colony. Any survivors? Sarah asked, though she already knew the answer. Negative, Captain. No life signs detected anywhere on the surface. The Pioneer's Hope was an exploration vessel, not a warship. They carried scientific equipment, emergency medical supplies, and basic defensive systems. They had come to Kepler 442b to deliver research materials and pick up the quarterly reports. Instead, they had found a massacre. Sarah activated the ship's communication system. This is Captain Mitchell of the Terran Republic vessel Pioneer's Hope to Earth Command. Priority Alpha transmission. She took a deep breath. The Kepler 442b research station has been completely destroyed. All personnel are confirmed dead. Evidence strongly suggests this was a deliberate attack by Hegemony Empire forces. The response came faster than expected. Admiral Thomas Brennan's face appeared. On the main screen, his weathered features grim. Behind him, Sarah could see the familiar blue and silver walls of Earth Command headquarters. Captain Mitchell, are you certain of your assessment? The Admiral's voice was carefully controlled, but Sarah could hear the underlying tension. Completely certain, sir. The attack patterns, weapon signatures, and tactical approach all match Hegemony military doctrine. This wasn't a pirate raid or accident. This was an extermination. Admiral Brennan's jaw tightened. Understood. Document everything and return to Earth immediately. Do not engage any Hegemony vessels. We'll handle this through proper diplomatic channels. But Sarah knew, as did everyone else in the Terran Republic, that diplomatic channels with the Hegemony Empire had been failing for decades. The Hegemony was an ancient alliance of 4 warrior species who had dominated this region of space for over 2,000 years. They viewed humans as upstart primitives who had no right to expand beyond their home system. The journey back to Earth took 2 weeks. During that time, news of the massacre spread throughout human space. Protests erupted on every human world. Families of the dead demanded justice. The media called for action. But President Marcus Webb continued to pursue diplomatic solutions, meeting with Hegemony representatives and filing formal complaints with the Galactic Assembly. The Hegemony's response was insulting in its arrogance. Ambassador Zektar, a towering reptilian draconis who served as the Empire's spokesman, dismissed the incident during a public broadcast. The facility was operating in violation of established territorial boundaries, he stated, his 3 eyes showing no emotion. The humans were warned repeatedly to withdraw from sectors designated for Hegemony expansion. Their persistence in illegal activities resulted in necessary enforcement action. Sarah watched the broadcast from her temporary quarters on Luna Station, feeling her anger build with each word. Illegal activities. The research station had been studying extremophile bacteria. The children who died had been learning about stellar formation. Necessary enforcement action. They had murdered nearly 900 innocent people and called it law enforcement. President Webb's response was measured and diplomatic. He requested a formal investigation, proposed compensation for the families, and suggested establishing clearer boundaries to prevent future incidents. The hegemony ignored every proposal. 3 months passed. The families of the dead grew more angry. Public opinion shifted heavily toward military action. Still, President Webb held firm to his belief that peaceful resolution was possible. He was a good man, Sarah thought, but he was dealing with a species that had no interest in peace. The second attack came without warning. The mining colony on Vesta Prime, home to 30,000 workers and their families, went silent during what should have been a routine shift change. When the rescue ships arrived, they found the same scene of systematic destruction that had marked Kepler 442b. This time, the hegemony didn't even bother with justifications. Ambassador Zektar simply stated that humans were expanding too aggressively and needed to learn restraint. Sarah was called to an emergency briefing at Earth Command headquarters. The massive complex buried beneath the Swiss Alps buzzed with activity as military leaders, government officials, and intelligence analysts worked to formulate a response. The main briefing room was packed with the highest-ranking officers in the Terran Republic fleet. President Webb stood at the front of the room, his usually calm demeanor replaced by barely controlled fury. Behind him, holographic displays showed the devastation at both attack sites. "Ladies and gentlemen," the president began, "for 50 years we have tried to build peaceful relationships with our galactic neighbors. We have followed their laws, respected their territories, and sought diplomatic solutions to every conflict. We believed that reasonable beings could coexist through dialogue and mutual respect." He paused, his eyes scanning the room. "We were wrong." The room erupted in murmurs. President Webb raised his hand for silence. "The hegemony empire has made their position clear. They do not view us as equals. They see us as an infestation to be controlled or eliminated. They have murdered over 30,000 of our citizens and shown no remorse." Admiral Brennan stepped forward. "Mr. President, what are your orders?" "As of this moment, the Terran Republic is withdrawing from all treaties with the hegemony empire and their allies. We are suspending our membership in the Galactic Assembly until such time as they demonstrate a willingness to hold the hegemony accountable for their crimes." The president's voice grew harder. "Furthermore, I am authorizing the activation of Project Prometheus. It's time to show the galaxy who we really are." Sarah felt a chill run down her spine. Project Prometheus was a rumor, a whisper in the corridors of power. Some said it was a myth designed to boost morale. Others claimed it was humanity's deepest secret, a military program so classified that even most admirals didn't know the details. "Admiral," Brennan nodded solemnly. "Authorization confirmed. Project Prometheus is now active. All participating personnel report to designated stations immediately." As the briefing broke up, Sarah found herself approached by a woman she had never seen before. She was tall, with silver hair, and the bearing of someone accustomed to command. Her uniform was black, rather than the standard blue of the Terran Republic fleet, with insignia that Sarah didn't recognize. "Captain Mitchell," the woman said, extending her hand. "I'm Admiral Rebecca Chen. You're being reassigned." "Reassigned? To what command?" Admiral Chen smiled, and it wasn't entirely friendly. "To one that officially doesn't exist. Report to Bay, 94 in 1 hour. Bring only essential personal items. Everything else will be provided." Bay 94 was in a section of Luna Station that Sarah had never visited. Her security clearance, which she had thought was quite high, barely got her through the first checkpoint. 3 more security screenings later, she found herself in what appeared to be a standard shuttle bay. Admiral Chen was waiting, along with about 50 other officers from various ships and stations. Sarah recognized some faces, but not others. All looked confused and curious. "Welcome to Project Prometheus," Admiral Chen announced. "For 30 years, while our diplomats smiled and negotiated, while our politicians preached peace and cooperation, we have been preparing for this day. We knew that eventually someone would test humanity's resolve. Someone would mistake our desire for peace as weakness." She gestured toward what Sarah had assumed was a maintenance shuttle. That assumption was their first mistake. The shuttle's hull began to shimmer and fade, revealing something completely different underneath. Where Sarah had seen a simple transport vessel, there now stood a sleek, angular ship unlike anything in the official Terran Republic fleet. Its hull was a deep black that seemed to absorb light, and energy patterns pulsed along its surface like a living nervous system. The TSV Retribution, Admiral Chen said with obvious pride, the first ship of the Prometheus fleet. Quantum stealth capabilities, gravitic weapons, and defensive systems that can absorb and redirect energy attacks. While the galaxy has been content with technology that hasn't fundamentally changed in centuries, humanity has been innovating. Sarah stared at the ship in amazement. How many vessels like this exist? 312 combat ships, Admiral Chen replied. Plus support vessels, mobile bases, and defensive platforms, all hidden throughout our solar system, all crewed by volunteers who have spent years training in absolute secrecy. Another officer, a young man Sarah didn't recognize, raised his hand. Admiral, what's our mission? Admiral Chen's expression grew cold. Simple. The Hegemony Empire believes they can murder our people without consequence. We're going to teach them otherwise. She paused, looking each officer in the eye. This is not a rescue mission. This is not a show of force. This is war, and we intend to win it absolutely. As the officers were led aboard the Retribution, Sarah felt history shifting around her. Humanity had tried to join the galactic community as peaceful explorers and scientists. They had been answered with violence and contempt. Now, they would show the galaxy that peaceful and helpless were not the same thing. The ship's engines hummed to life with a sound unlike anything Sarah had ever heard. Through the viewports, she could see other vessels becoming visible as their stealth systems disengaged. The Prometheus fleet was larger and more advanced than anything the known galaxy had ever seen. Admiral Chen's voice echoed through the ship's communication system. All vessels, this is Admiral Chen. We launch in 1 hour. Our destination is the Draconis system, heart of the Hegemony Empire. We carry with us the hopes of every human being who has ever looked up at the stars and dreamed of peace. She paused, her voice growing harder. We also carry the fury of every parent who has lost a child, every spouse who has been widowed, every human being who has watched our people die while our enemies laugh at our restraint. The Admiral's final words sent a chill through the fleet. The age of warnings is over. The age of mercy has ended. Today, we teach the galaxy that humanity can be reasoned with, negotiated with, and befriended. But we cannot be conquered, cannot be intimidated, and will never again allow our people to be slaughtered without consequence. No more warnings. No more mercy. Today we go to war. Fire and steel. Humanity's true face. The Hegemony Emperor Vex Thule sat upon his crystalline throne in the heart of the Draconis Prime orbital palace, his 4 arms gesturing dismissively as he received reports from across his empire. The massive, reptilian ruler had controlled the hegemony for over 3 centuries, crushing dozens of species who had dared to challenge his authority. The humans have withdrawn their ambassadors, reported General Kardesh, his scarred hide bearing the marks of countless battles. Their president issued some statement about accountability and justice, the usual primitive emotional responses. Emperor Vextul's laugh was a harsh rumbling sound that echoed through the throne room. Let them withdraw. Let them pout in their little corner of space. Perhaps now they understand their place in the galaxy. Should we prepare for any retaliation, my lord? Asked Admiral Zixmar, commander of the Hegemony's 4th battle fleet, from the humans. The Emperor's 3 eyes showed amusement. They have perhaps 200 vessels total, most designed for exploration and transport. We have 15,000 warships, each capable of destroying entire worlds. What could they possibly do to threaten us? On the outer edge of the Draconis, system reality began to ripple. Space itself seemed to bend and twist as something massive approached. The system's sensor networks, designed to detect ships while they were still light years away, registered nothing. The automated defense platforms continued their routine patrols, oblivious to the approaching storm. Admiral Rebecca Chen stood on the bridge of the TSV Retribution. watching the tactical display as her fleet moved through quantum space toward their target. Around her, 300 ships materialized from folds in reality itself, each one a masterpiece of technology that had taken decades to develop in absolute secrecy. Fleet deployment complete, reported Commander Lisa Torres from the tactical station. All vessels report ready for combat operations. Admiral Chen nodded. Signal the fleet. Execute pattern Alpha 7. Time to announce our arrival. Across the Draconis system, hegemony ships went about their normal routines. Cargo vessels moved between planets, mining operations continued on asteroid facilities, and patrol ships conducted standard sweeps of empty space. It was a normal day in the heart of an empire that had known peace and prosperity for centuries. The first indication that something was wrong came from the outer patrol station orbiting the system's edge. Sensor operator Tilmac was reviewing routine scanner data when every alarm on his console began screaming simultaneously. "Commander," he called to his supervisor, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures throughout the system. Multiple contacts, but they're not matching any known ship configurations." Commander Rektal hurried to the sensor station. "Show me." The main display activated, showing a tactical map of the Draconis system. Red dots appeared across the display, hundreds of them, in perfect formation around every major planet and facility. "That's impossible," Rektal whispered. "Nothing could have gotten past our early warning systems. Nothing could have positioned so many ships without us detecting them." On every communication channel throughout the system, the same message began broadcasting. Simultaneously, a human female appeared on every screen, her black uniform bearing insignia that no hegemony database could identify. "Attention, citizens of the hegemony empire," Admiral Chen said, her voice calm but carrying an undercurrent of absolute authority. "I am Admiral Rebecca Chen of the Terran Republic Defense Force. Your government has committed acts of genocide against innocent human civilians. You have murdered children, scientists, and families who pose no threat to your empire." Throughout the system, hegemony commanders scrambled to respond to the impossible situation. Ships that shouldn't exist had somehow positioned themselves within striking distance of every major target in their most secure system. "Your leaders have ignored our attempts at peaceful resolution," Admiral Chen continued. "They have laughed at our calls for justice. They have mistaken our preference for diplomacy as weakness." Her expression hardened. They were wrong. Emperor Vexthal stormed onto the bridge of his flagship, the massive dreadnought Eternal Dominion. What is the meaning of this intrusion? How did primitive human vessels penetrate our defenses? Admiral Zixmar worked frantically at his command console. "My lord, our sensors show 312 unknown vessels throughout the system. Their technology appears to be significantly more advanced than our intelligence suggested." "Impossible," the Emperor roared. "Humans barely understand basic fusion power. Their ships are held together with metal plates and chemical propulsion. The communication display, Admiral Chen continued her broadcast. "The hegemony empire will immediately cease all military operations against human settlements. You will surrender all personnel responsible for the attacks on Kepler 442b and Vesta Prime for trial. You will pay reparations to the families of those murdered." The Emperor's rage was incandescent. "Open a channel to this human fool." The transmission connected, and Emperor Vexthal's massive form appeared on Admiral Chen's screen. "Human, you dare enter our sacred system with your pathetic vessels? You will withdraw immediately, or face the full might of the hegemony fleet." Admiral Chen's response was perfectly calm. "Emperor Vexthal, you have 30 minutes to begin compliance with our demands. Any hostile action against our vessels will result in immediate retaliation." "Retaliation?" The Emperor's laugh shook the bridge around him. "You threaten us?" "Admiral Zixmar, destroy every human ship in the system. Show them the price of defying the hegemony." "As you command, my lord." The hegemony's response was swift and overwhelming. Every warship in the system turned toward the nearest human vessel and opened fire simultaneously. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and fusion torpedoes filled space with deadly energy. The human ships made no attempt to evade. They simply absorbed the attacks, their hulls glowing briefly as exotic matter converted the incoming energy into harmless light. Impossible, Admiral Zixmar whispered as his sensors showed zero damage to any human vessel. On the Retribution's bridge, Admiral Chen watched the tactical display with satisfaction. They've made their choice. All vessels, you are cleared to engage. Show them what humanity learned while we were hiding in our little corner of space. The human response was precise and devastating. Each ship fired a single weapon, a focused beam of gravitational force that passed through shields and armor as if they didn't exist. Where the beam struck, hegemony vessels simply ceased to exist, their matter converted to energy in a flash of brilliant light. In the span of 30 seconds, the hegemony lost over 200 ships. Throughout the system, panic spread as crews realized their most powerful weapons were useless against the human fleet. While human weapons could destroy their vessels with ease, ships that had patrolled these stars for decades were reduced to expanding clouds of plasma in moments. My lord, Admiral Zixmar's voice shook with disbelief. We've lost 60% of our fleet. Our weapons appear to have no effect on their vessels. Emperor Vexthul stared at the tactical display in shock. Centuries of military dominance, thousands of years of technological superiority, had been rendered meaningless in less than a minute. Admiral Chen's voice cut through the chaos. Emperor Vexthul, you have seen a demonstration of our capabilities. Surrender now and the remainder of your fleet will be spared. Continue fighting, and we will reduce every hegemony vessel to atoms. The Emperor's pride warred with his survival instincts. Around him, his commanders waited for orders as more human ships appeared throughout the system. They had somehow hidden thousands of vessels, not hundreds. Sir, reported the communications officer, we're receiving surrender requests from 12 of our remaining ships. Their commanders are requesting permission to yield. Before the Emperor could respond, another wave of human attacks eliminated the ships that were still attempting to fight. The message was clear: surrender or die. This is impossible, the Emperor repeated, his voice hollow with shock. No species advances this quickly. No one develops such technology in secret. Admiral Chen appeared on his screen again. You made the mistake of judging us by the ships we allowed you to see, the technology we permitted you to detect. While your species has grown complacent in your dominance, humanity has been innovating, learning, preparing. She leaned forward, her eyes hard as steel. You wanted to teach us our place in the galaxy. Congratulations, you've succeeded. Our place is at the top. The battle for the Draconis system was over in less than an hour. The hegemony's most powerful fleet had been destroyed or captured without the loss of a single human vessel. Across the galaxy, other species watched in amazement as news of the impossible victory spread. Emperor Vexthul found himself a prisoner aboard his own flagship, which had been captured intact by human boarding teams. The soldiers who took him into custody moved with precision and technology that made his own elite guards look primitive by comparison. As the human fleet consolidated control over the Draconis system, Admiral Chen sent a message that would be heard throughout the galaxy. To all civilizations receiving this transmission, the Terran Republic wishes to make our position clear. We came to the stars in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship. We were answered with violence and contempt. Her image was broadcast on every communication network in known space. The Hegemony Empire chose to test our resolve. They discovered that humanity's restraint should never be mistaken for weakness. Any species or government that threatens human lives will face the same fate. She paused, letting the weight of her words sink in across 100 worlds. However, we extend our hand in friendship to all who seek peace. The age of empire and domination is ending. The age of cooperation and mutual respect begins now. In the depths of space, hidden observers from dozens of species began emergency sessions. The balance of galactic power had shifted in a single day. The hegemony, which had ruled through fear and superior force for millennia, had been brought to its knees by a species they had dismissed as primitive. Humanity had announced its arrival. On the galactic stage, not with words or diplomacy, but with overwhelming and undeniable strength. The galaxy would never be the same. Ashes of Empire, a galaxy transformed. 6 months after the fall of Draconis Prime, the trial of Emperor Vexithul began on neutral ground at the Galactic Assembly Station. The massive space station, built at the intersection of 5 major trade routes, had never seen anything like the gathering that now filled its halls. Admiral Rebecca Chen walked through the corridors alongside Ambassador Maria Santos, humanity's new representative to the Assembly. Around them, delegates from dozens of species huddled in nervous groups, all discussing the same topic: the complete transformation of galactic politics. The hegemony's former territories are already applying for membership in the Free World's coalition, Ambassador Santos reported as they made their way to the main assembly hall. 17 systems have officially joined, and another 31 have requested protection agreements. Admiral Chen nodded, her expression thoughtful. Any resistance from the remaining hegemony forces minimal. Most of their military commanders have either surrendered or gone into hiding. The few holdouts are isolated and cut off from their supply lines. Santos paused. Admiral, the other major powers are requesting formal meetings. The Krell Federation, the Altair Consortium, even the mysterious Void Walkers have sent diplomatic envoys. They reached the observation deck overlooking the main assembly hall. Below them, hundreds of delegates from across known space filled the amphitheater-style chamber. At the center, in a containment field that shimmered with energy, stood the former Emperor Vexthul. The once mighty ruler of the hegemony empire looked diminished in his restraints. His 4 arms were bound, his reptilian features showing the strain of months in captivity. Around him, the evidence of his crimes was displayed on holographic screens: the destroyed research station on Kepler 442b, the massacred families on Dia Vesta Prime, and dozens of other atrocities committed throughout his reign. Chief Prosecutor Elena Rodriguez, sister to one of the scientists killed at Kepler 442b, stood before the assembly. Her voice carried clearly through the hall as she detailed the systematic genocide that the hegemony had committed against human civilians. "The evidence is overwhelming," she stated, gesturing toward the displays. The hegemony empire, under the direct orders of Emperor Vexthul, engaged in deliberate attacks against non-combatant populations. They targeted research facilities, mining colonies, and civilian settlements with the specific intent of terrorizing humanity into submission. In the defendant's area, Vexthul's attorney, a tall, crystalline being from the neutral Prism Collective, attempted to argue that the attacks were legitimate military actions against illegal human expansion. The argument fell flat when presented with evidence that the targeted settlements had been established with full diplomatic approval from the Galactic Assembly. Admiral Chen watched the proceedings with grim satisfaction. Justice for the murdered civilians was important, but the trial served a larger purpose. It demonstrated to the galaxy that the age of might makes right was ending. Even the most powerful empires would be held accountable for their crimes. "Admiral," a familiar voice called from behind her. Admiral Chen turned to see Captain Sarah Mitchell approaching, now wearing the uniform of the Free World's coalition. "Defense Force, Captain Mitchell," Chen smiled. "How are the new recruits adapting to our technology?" "Better than expected," Sarah replied. "The Altaran refugees from the former hegemony territories are particularly eager to learn. Having their homeworld glassed by the hegemony for refusing to provide slave labor has given them significant motivation." The formation of the Free World's coalition had been humanity's most ambitious project since the war ended. Rather than simply replacing the hegemony with another empire, Earth had proposed something unprecedented: a truly voluntary alliance of species committed to mutual defense and cooperation. "Any word from the expedition to the hegemony homeworld?" Admiral Chen asked. Sarah's expression grew somber. "The archaeological teams have confirmed what we suspected. The hegemony's rise to power involved the complete extermination of at least 12 native species on worlds they conquered. The mass graves on Draconis Prime alone contain over 50 million beings. This revelation had shocked even those species that had opposed the hegemony. The Empire hadn't simply conquered and subjugated other civilizations. They had systematically eliminated entire peoples whose only crime was existing on worlds the hegemony wanted. In the assembly hall below, the prosecutor continued presenting evidence. Recordings captured from hegemony military computers showed planning sessions where the murder of human civilians was discussed as casually as supply logistics. The emperor himself had personally approved targeting lists that included schools and hospitals. The defendant claims these were military actions, Prosecutor Rodriguez stated, her voice filled with controlled anger. I submit to this assembly that the deliberate targeting of children, scientists, and families constitutes the highest form of war crime. The hegemony empire didn't seek military victory. They sought to terrorize an entire species into submission through mass murder. A murmur ran through the assembly. Many of the delegates had suffered under hegemony rule themselves, though few had faced the level of systematic brutality directed at humanity. The defense attorney rose to present his closing arguments. Honored delegates, while the hegemony's actions were regrettable, we must consider the broader context. The rapid expansion of human settlements threatened the established order of this region. Emperor Vexthul believed he was protecting his people's legitimate interests. Before he could continue, Admiral Chen stepped forward to the speaker's podium. As the supreme military commander of the Free Worlds Coalition, she had the right to address the assembly. Honored delegates, she began, her voice carrying clearly throughout the vast chamber. The defense speaks of legitimate interests and established order. I would like to remind this assembly what that established order looked like. Behind her, new holographic displays activated, showing the conditions on worlds under hegemony rule. Slave labor camps, mass executions, and the systematic suppression of technological development among subject species. The hegemony maintained power by ensuring that no other species could threaten their dominance. Admiral Chen continued. They deliberately prevented scientific advancement, crushed educational systems, and murdered anyone who showed too much intelligence or creativity. This wasn't governance, it was systematic oppression designed to last forever. She turned to face Emperor Vexthul directly. The defendant claims he was protecting his people's interests. In reality, he was perpetuating a system of galactic slavery that had already lasted for over 2,000 years. The emperor's three eyes blazed with fury, but the containment field prevented him from speaking without permission from the court. Admiral Chen's voice grew harder. Humanity's crime was not illegal expansion or threatening established order. Our crime was being too successful too quickly. We developed technology the hegemony couldn't control. We established colonies they couldn't tax or subjugate. We offered proof that their system wasn't the only way to organize galactic civilization. She paused, looking out at the hundreds of delegates from dozens of species. That's why they targeted our civilians. They weren't trying to win a war. They were trying to make an example. They wanted to show the galaxy what happened to species that grew too strong, too independent, too free. The assembly hall fell silent. The truth of her words resonated with many delegates whose own peoples had suffered under similar threats. This trial isn't just about justice for human victims, Admiral Chen concluded. It's about deciding what kind of galaxy we want to live in. Do we accept that might makes right? Do we allow the strong to prey on the weak without consequence? Or do we establish a new order based on justice, cooperation, and the fundamental right of all sentient beings to live free from fear? The vote, when it came, was overwhelming. Emperor Vexthul was found guilty of genocide, crimes against sentient beings, and violations of every established law of war. The sentence was life imprisonment on a secure facility, where he would spend his remaining years contemplating the cost of his empire's cruelty. But the trial's real significance became clear in the weeks that followed. Species after species applied to join the Free Worlds Coalition. The promise of protection from predatory empires combined with access to humanity's advanced technology and peaceful development assistance proved irresistible. Admiral Chen stood in the observation lounge of the Coalition flagship Prometheus, watching as another group of refugee ships arrived at the massive space station that had become the Coalition's headquarters. These vessels carried the last survivors of the Kelhari people, whose homeworld had been destroyed by hegemony forces just days before the Empire's fall. Captain Sarah Mitchell joined her at the viewport. The Kelhari medical ships are requesting immediate assistance. Their people are suffering from radiation exposure and malnutrition. Deploy our hospital ships immediately, Admiral Chen ordered. Full treatment, no cost. Added to the coalition's humanitarian budget. This had become routine over the past months. As the hegemony's former territories were liberated, the coalition discovered the full extent of the empire's brutality. Entire civilizations had been reduced to scattered refugees. Others had been so thoroughly oppressed that they had forgotten their own histories and cultures. Admiral, Sarah said quietly, do you ever wonder if we're moving too fast? 6 months ago, we were a single species trying to find our place in the galaxy. Now we're responsible for the safety and welfare of over 40 different civilizations. Admiral Chen considered the question carefully. Sometimes, but then I think about what the galaxy looked like before we acted. The hegemony wasn't the only predatory empire out there. They were just the most successful. She gestured toward the refugee ships. These people have nowhere else to go. The old order failed them completely. If we don't provide an alternative, someone else will fill the power vacuum, and there's no guarantee they'll be any better than the hegemony. As if summoned by their conversation, Ambassador Santos approached with a data tablet. Admiral, we've received a formal communication from the Vorthan Empire in the Outer Rim. They're demanding that we withdraw all coalition forces from what they claim is their traditional sphere of influence. The Vorthan Empire was another ancient power, smaller than the hegemony had been, but still controlling over 300 star systems through a combination of military might and economic manipulation. Their traditional sphere of influence? Admiral Chen asked with raised eyebrows. Apparently any system within 50 light-years of their border that contains resources they might want to exploit someday, Santos replied dryly. They're particularly upset about our protection agreement with the Nexari Republic. The Nexari have significant rare earth deposits that the Vorthans have been eyeing for decades. Admiral Chen sighed. The Nexari were a peaceful, technologically advanced species that had managed to maintain their independence through careful diplomacy and strategic alliances. When the hegemony fell, the Vorthans had immediately moved to fill the power vacuum in that region. What's our response? Captain Mitchell asked. The same as always, Admiral Chen replied. The Free Worlds Coalition recognizes the sovereignty of all member species and will defend their right to self-determination. If the Vorthans want to negotiate trade agreements or establish diplomatic relations with the Nexari, they're welcome to do so through proper channels. If they want to conquer and subjugate them, they'll face the same fate as the hegemony. Ambassador Santos nodded. I'll draft the response. Should I include a reminder of what happened to the last empire that tested our resolve? Subtly, Admiral Chen said with a slight smile. We're not looking for another war, but we won't shy away from one if necessary. The truth was that the galaxy had become a much more peaceful place since the hegemony's fall. The demonstration of humanity's military capabilities had convinced most potential aggressors to seek diplomatic solutions to their problems. The few that hadn't learned that lesson had quickly discovered that the coalition's technology had only improved since the war. A year after Emperor Vexthul's trial, Admiral Chen found herself standing before the newly constructed memorial wall on Luna Station. The wall bore the names of every human civilian murdered by the hegemony, carved in black stone that reflected the light of distant stars. Captain Sarah Mitchell, now promoted to Admiral and serving as the coalition's exploration commander, joined her in the quiet ceremony. Around them, families of the victims placed flowers and small mementos at the base of the wall. Elena Rodriguez would have been proud, Sarah said quietly, referencing the prosecutor who had died in a transport accident just months after the trial's conclusion. She lived to see justice done. Admiral Chen nodded. She also lived to see the beginning of something unprecedented in galactic history. A truly voluntary alliance of equals, committed to protecting each other from predatory powers. The Free Worlds Coalition had grown to include 87 different species across 400 star systems. Unlike previous galactic governments, membership was truly voluntary and could be revoked at any time. The Coalition's charter explicitly forbade the conquest or subjugation of member species, and its military forces were strictly limited to defensive operations and peacekeeping missions. Admiral, an aide approached with a communication device. We're receiving a priority transmission from the Outer Rim. It's from species we've never encountered before. The transmission showed a being unlike any in the Coalition's extensive databases. It was tall and graceful, with translucent skin that seemed to shift between different colors. When it spoke, its voice had a musical quality that was both beautiful and slightly unsettling. "Greetings, representatives of the Free Worlds Coalition," the being said. "I am Harmonizer Veltar of the Ethereal Communion. We have been observing your expansion with great interest." Admiral Chen exchanged glances with Sarah. The Outer Rim was largely unexplored, home to species that had never made contact with the Galactic community. "We have watched as you ended the reign of the Hegemony Empire," Veltar continued. "We have seen how you treat the species under your protection. Your methods are unusual. Most expanding powers seek to dominate. You seek to liberate." The transmission paused, and Veltar's image seemed to shimmer slightly. "The Ethereal Communion controls territories far beyond your current borders. We have remained hidden because previous galactic powers sought only conquest and exploitation. But you appear to be different. We would like to propose a meeting," Veltar concluded. "There are threats in the deep galaxy that no single alliance can face alone. Perhaps it is time for the hidden powers to reveal themselves and work together toward a common defense." The transmission ended, leaving the command center in stunned silence. The implications were staggering. How many powerful civilizations had remained hidden because they feared the galactic community's aggressive tendencies? "What do you think?" Sarah asked. Admiral Chen stared at the blank screen where Veltar's image had been. "I think we're about to discover that humanity's impact on the galaxy has been even greater than we realized. We didn't just end the hegemony's reign of terror. We changed the fundamental nature of how galactic civilizations interact with each other." 3 months later, Admiral Chen stood on the bridge of the exploration vessel New Horizons as it approached the rendezvous coordinates provided by the Ethereal Communion. Around them, space seemed empty except for the distant glow of unfamiliar stars. "Admiral," the sensor operator called out, "I'm detecting massive energy signatures directly ahead. Whatever's out there, it's big." As they watched, space began to ripple and fold. A structure materialized that defied easy description. It was part space station, part living organism, stretching for hundreds of kilometers in every direction. Energy patterns flowed along its surface like the neural networks of a vast brain. "Welcome, Admiral Chen." Harmonizer Veltar's voice came through their communication system. "Please join us aboard the Nexus. There is much to discuss." The meeting that followed would be remembered as one of the most significant in galactic history. Representatives from 12 different hidden civilizations had gathered, each possessing technology and knowledge that rivaled or exceeded humanity's own achievements. "For millennia," Veltar explained as they sat around a conference table that seemed to be made of crystallized light, "our peoples have watched the younger races tear themselves apart in endless cycles of conquest and oppression. The hegemony was simply the latest in a long line of predatory empires." "Why reveal yourselves now?" Admiral Chen asked. A being that looked like living shadow spoke from across the table. "Because for the first time in our recorded history, a young species has broken the cycle. You defeated the hegemony not to replace them, but to free their victims. You could have established your own empire. Instead, you created a voluntary alliance based on mutual cooperation." Another representative, this one resembling a geometric pattern that somehow maintained a stable form, added its voice. "More importantly, you have demonstrated that advanced technology and military power can be used to protect rather than exploit. This gives us hope that the galaxy might finally be ready for a new kind of civilization." The discussions that followed lasted for weeks. Each hidden civilization shared knowledge of threats lurking in the deep galaxy. Machine intelligences that consumed entire star systems, energy beings that fed on the life force of planets, and extragalactic invaders that periodically swept through the galaxy like a plague. These threats require cooperation on a scale never before attempted, Veltar explained. No single species, no matter how advanced, can face them alone. But together, with our combined knowledge and resources, we might have a chance. Admiral Chen listened to descriptions of dangers that made the Hegemony Empire seem like a minor nuisance by comparison. Yet she also felt a growing sense of hope. Humanity had sought the stars in search of knowledge and friendship. They had found war and hostility instead. But their response to that hostility had somehow opened doors to possibilities they had never imagined. "The Free Worlds Coalition accepts your proposal," she said finally. "But I have one condition. Any alliance we form must maintain the same principles that govern the coalition: voluntary membership, mutual respect, and the absolute protection of each member's sovereignty." The hidden civilizations agreed, and the foundation was laid for something unprecedented in galactic history. The Grand Alliance, a cooperative federation of advanced civilizations committed to protecting all sentient life throughout the galaxy. 5 years after the fall of the Hegemony Empire, President Marcus Webb stood before the United Earth Assembly to deliver his final address before retiring from office. The chamber was packed with representatives from across human space, but also with alien observers from dozens of coalition species. "When I first took office," President Webb began, "humanity's greatest ambition was to find our place among the stars. We dreamed of joining a galactic community that would welcome us as equals. Instead, we found ourselves facing extinction at the hands of those who saw us as nothing more than upstart primitives." He paused, looking out at the diverse gathering before him. "Today, humanity stands as a founding member of the largest voluntary alliance in galactic history. We have not only found our place among the stars, we have helped reshape what it means to be a galactic civilization." The president's expression grew serious. "But our greatest achievement is not our military victories or technological advances. Our greatest achievement is proving that strength and compassion are not mutually exclusive. That power can be used to protect rather than oppress. That different species, with different cultures and values, can work together toward common goals, without sacrificing their individual identities." In the audience, Admiral Chen listened with pride and reflection. The scared, angry woman who had watched the Hegemony fleet flee from Earth orbit seemed like a different person now. The galaxy had changed, but so had humanity. They had learned that being the strongest didn't mean being the most aggressive. True strength lay in knowing when to fight and when to protect, when to lead and when to follow. "The future remains uncertain," President Webb concluded. "The galaxy is vast, and we have barely begun to explore its mysteries. New challenges will arise, new threats will emerge, and new opportunities will present themselves. But whatever comes next, humanity will face it not as conquerors or victims, but as guardians of a better way forward. The age of empire is ending. The age of cooperation has begun. And that, more than any military victory, is humanity's true gift to the galaxy." As the assembly erupted in applause from dozens of different species, Admiral Chen reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. Humanity had entered the galactic stage with the destruction of a research station and the murder of innocent people. They had responded with overwhelming force, but more importantly, with unwavering principle. The Hegemony Empire had sought to teach humanity its place in the galaxy. In the end, they had succeeded beyond their wildest nightmares. Humanity's place was not as subjects or conquerors, but as the guardians of a new galactic order based on justice, cooperation, and the fundamental right of all sentient beings to determine their own destiny. The galaxy would never be the same, and that, Admiral Chen knew, was exactly as it should be. No more warnings, no more mercy, but also no more empires built on the suffering of others. The age of enforced peace had begun, and humanity would ensure it lasted.